I'm Jamie from ESL Teacher 365, and today I'm interviewing Mexican-American teacher Josie on what it's like to teach abroad in China and Taiwan. From culture shock to class size to teach abroad tips, find out what it's really like to teach in these places. Thanks for coming on the channel today. Welcome, Josie.
Thanks for having me.
Where and when did you first teach abroad?
I taught in China from 2009 to 2010, and then in Taiwan from 2019 to 2022.
What were your students and schools like? I guess we'll start off by talking about China.
Okay, so I taught at a public middle school in Changsha. This is in the Hunan province of China. I taught about 14 to 16 classes, and each class had about 60 students. And I was the only teacher in the room. Yeah, so I learned a lot quickly about teaching English by myself. The school was really awesome. They gave me my own office, my own apartment on campus, and I was the only foreign teacher there. So everyone was really welcoming and they did their best to try to make me feel as comfortable as possible. So it was a really cool experience. In Taiwan, I taught at 4 public middle schools. 2 were located in the city I lived in, Taoyuan. This is where the international airport is. And then the other 2 schools were located in the countryside. My school would drive me there 1 day per week. And this is so students in the countryside could have access to a foreign teacher. The class sizes in Taiwan were about 30 students per class, and I had a co-teacher in the classroom with me at all times.
Oh, nice. Was it different teaching in the rural schools instead of the regular schools in Taiwan?
The students there were much more excited to be with me because they had limited time with a foreign English teacher. That was pretty much the only difference. But in all schools, the students were kind, caring, excited to be with me. And so it was really nice.
Tell us a bit about the visa process. Was it easy to get visas for China and Taiwan? Was that process a little bit difficult?
When I taught in China, I went with a program called World Teach. And basically, I just handed them my passport. I had a background check, and they took care of everything. I paid them because I was also able to get TEFL certified. And then I also had to pay a deposit, which I received on completion of the program. So with this organization, World Teach, it was super easy. The program I was in Taiwan, it's called Teach Taiwan. There I had to submit a background check, my degree, and my substitute teaching license. And then after that, I did a video interview, and then they gave my video to schools. And then the schools that were interested in me, I was able to pick where I wanted to go. When I selected the school, there was a school coordinator that helped me get an apartment, do the health exam, and do everything for the visa. It didn't take very long at all. I would say that I was able to, with the program in China, maybe a month. I also had to submit my degree for that program as well. And then with Taiwan, probably the same. So
nice.
very easy, very quick. I feel like in China and Taiwan, they really want to help people and make it seamless and easy as possible. So I like that I found these programs that had that support.
Did you experience any culture shock?
Absolutely, because before going to these places, I could not speak Mandarin. And so I couldn't speak the language, I couldn't read, I couldn't write. Basically, I'm just transported to these places. In China, this was before our smartphones, and I would usually take a notepad and I would like draw pictures or like use my body and mime like whatever I needed. I would ask my students like, how do I say this? And like, can you write this for me so I can just show it to someone when I need help? That experience really taught me that I'm really resilient and adaptable because I was able to just absorb so much Mandarin and learn quickly. And that helped me later in Taiwan. And then also some environmental factors. I didn't realize how much the air pollution, would affect me. So just some things to consider if you're coming from somewhere else that you might not expect it, but it might happen that you have these culture shocks. I had some positive culture shocks. In China, I was in a region where the food was super spicy, and I'm Mexican American, so I could definitely eat the food and like really love it. And so I was just shocked because in San Francisco, I never had that type of Chinese food. So when I went there, I was like, wow, this is so delicious and such a good surprise. In Taiwan, I had a culture shock because I'm vegetarian. It's so vegetarian friendly there. And so that was also a positive culture shock.
What was the biggest difference between teaching in China and Taiwan?
The way in which they want you to teach.
Hmm.
So in China, the focus was more on having students speak and listen with a native speaker, not really focusing on reading and writing. Whereas in Taiwan, they have a goal, a bilingual goal by 2030. And so teaching there, they wanted people who could teach other subjects in English, for example, PE, home ec, art, music. And so I was able to help in Taiwan teach teachers how to use English in these courses and help students in other subjects as well.
What advice do you have for people who would like to teach in China or Taiwan?
Go with an open mind. Remember that you're a guest. And so just because you're used to things going a certain way in your own country, just remember that you're a guest and you need to be flexible and adaptable and just go with the flow. You're going to have ups and downs, you're going to have challenges. So try to think of some strategies to help you feel supported when you're in a different place. Like, do you have a friend group? Do you know people who are there? Can you journal? What can you do to help yourself? Because you will have some challenging days for sure.
What is your favorite memory from teaching abroad?
Just anytime that I could connect with my students and share my Mexican culture. Because a lot of my students, they've never met someone who's Mexican American and they didn't know anything about it. For me, it was just always so important to share that side of myself and bring my authentic self into the classroom. So anytime I could share something and the students could connect and find a similarity with their own culture, it just made me feel so proud.
Did you face any discrimination as a Mexican American teaching abroad?
I don't think so, but I think that when I taught in China, the students were surprised when I walked into the classroom because in different places outside of the US, if they consume a lot of American culture, they can assume that Americans are Caucasian. And so when I told the students like my history and my background and drew a map of the US and told them like, oh, before this was the US, like this side was Mexico and this was where my family's from, it made them, I think, appreciate me more because they thought that, wow, this is someone who knows a lot about her country and her history. And I think it helped to keep them engaged and want to learn more. The Taiwanese, they had a mindset that Americans are very diverse. And so I felt that the students and teachers, they were really interested and curious to know more about my Mexican side of my culture.
What was the biggest lesson teaching abroad taught you?
Not to take my Mexican American identity and culture for granted. Because growing up in the United States, there were times that I had internalized racism living in California. And as I've grown into myself and learned more about myself and left the US and taught abroad in different places, my culture is so rich and I just learned to appreciate myself and my culture so much more. So for me, it's been a lot of identity healing and confidence and growth, and it's so awesome. I would say that's the biggest lesson.
Wow, that's really interesting because it's almost like you had to leave your country, go to a completely different environment to find out who you are and connect best with your identity.
I think so. Just being somewhere else where there's not much diversity, that made me, it just opened my eyes because being in a different environment, it will do that to you. You start observing and seeing like and reflecting, I think, a lot more.
What advice do you have for people who are just starting their teach abroad journey? So maybe they have been thinking about teaching abroad, they're not sure if it's right for them. What would you say?
If you love working with children and being in a classroom with children, 100% do it. Make it happen. Research. Our world is constantly changing politically, environmentally, with the economy. And I realized in this interview that my experience in China will never be someone else's experience in China. So if you want to do something, make it happen because life is short. And if you're interested in it, do it. The other thing I would say is that if you're trying to have a gap year, if you're like, I just want to backpack through a country, please don't do teach abroad programs because it isn't fair to the kids. It's also not fair to other people like me who love being in the classroom because you'd be taking that opportunity from someone else. So we live in a time now where you can get a remote job, there are remote work visas. If you just want to travel and backpack, go that route. But if you love kids, you love to be in the classroom, you love to teach, do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's very different to teach abroad just for a year, maybe try it out or just kind of take a gap year, but know that you're going to be finished and then to make this your career. I've been teaching abroad since 2010, so I've definitely made a career out of it. That doesn't mean that you have to, but there are people who are super passionate about teaching and living abroad. So it's a very different experience from people who are just wanting to travel and meet a lot of different people.
Right. And even when I'm not teaching abroad, I'm still in San Francisco. My job was to teach students about the environment, how to compost and recycle to protect the planet. So for me, even though I don't have a teacher career per se, I still have a career being in the classroom setting with students. And for me, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. So again, this is why I stress that please go into these programs if being in front of kids and in the classroom is something that you want to do for the long term.
Thanks so much, Josie, for coming on my channel today. Where can people find you if they're interested in learning about China and Taiwan and to follow your teaching journey?
Thanks so much for having me. And if people want to know more about teaching in China or Taiwan, they want to know more about something I said in this interview, please message me and follow me on my Instagram, Josie and the Classroom.
I will leave all of Josie's links in the description down below so you can connect with her. Thank you so much again for coming on my channel. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment below. Or if you would like to request another country for a teacher interview, you can leave that down below too. Happy teaching!